broke ground in the Grammy Awards. I
Really
was only
did.
the third female entertainer to win a Grammy Award. You know, they didn't even present Grammy Awards.
For decades, Jeannie Seeley's voice carried the soul of country music, captivating hearts, telling stories of love and loss. But behind the melodies and spotlight, a darker truth was lurking. What if the legend was hiding secrets no one was ready to face? From sold-out shows to whispered rumors, her story was never just about the songs. Now, the mystery is finally solved, and the truth isn't what anyone expected. Jeannie Seeley was once the very embodiment of country music charm, a voice that effortlessly cut through the air, blending sweetness with a raw, gritty edge that made her stand out in a crowded field. Born in Pennsylvania, she emerged from humble beginnings, carving a path through a music industry that was often unforgiving, especially to women. Her rise was nothing short of remarkable. With her breakthrough hit "Don't Touch Me" in 1966, Seeley didn't just climb the charts, she captured the hearts of listeners across the nation. That song, with its haunting melody and emotional depth, quickly became a classic, cementing her place in the Nashville sound and securing her respect from peers and fans alike. The years that followed were a testament to her resilience and talent. Jeannie became a beloved fixture on the Grand Ole Opry stage, a platform that both celebrated her and tested her resolve. In an era when country music was overwhelmingly dominated by men, she managed to carve out a unique space for herself. Known for her charismatic presence, infectious smile, and storytelling ability, Seeley was more than just a singer. She was a symbol of strength and grace in a tough industry. Her sold-out shows and glowing reviews painted a picture of success, and her steady stream of hits kept her name alive and well across generations of country music fans. Yet, behind the dazzling spotlight and the applause lay a different, far more complicated story. One that was rarely told publicly, but whispered quietly within the industry. While fans celebrated the music and admired her poise, those closest to the scene noticed subtle signs of strain. Industry insiders recalled moments when Jeannie seemed distant or distracted, moments when the weight of the relentless pace and scrutiny of fame appeared to press heavily on her shoulders. The toll of maintaining a public persona while dealing with private struggles was immense. Fame, with all its trappings, is often a double-edged sword, and Jeannie Seeley's journey was no exception. The pressures of life in the public eye, the isolation, the constant judgment, and the demand for perfection left marks that no amount of charm or talent could fully erase. Her experience was emblematic of many women in country music during that era. While they were celebrated for their artistry and contributions to the genre, the hidden cost was often overlooked. The emotional exhaustion, the battles with loneliness, and the unspoken challenges of navigating a male-dominated industry that offered little support. Jeannie's story became a reflection of this broader struggle, a story that juxtaposed public triumph with private hardship. For years, the narrative remained focused on her achievements and milestones, glossing over the more difficult realities she faced. But the whispers grew louder over time. What started as faint rumors and hushed conversations slowly gained momentum, casting a shadow over the gleaming image that had once seemed unassailable. Today, as the layers of Jeannie Seeley's legacy are peeled back, a more complex portrait emerges. It's a story that acknowledges both her incredible contributions to country music and the personal battles she fought behind the scenes. The truth about her life, marked by both dazzling success and hidden pain, resonates far beyond the stage, reminding us of the human cost behind the music we love. These whispers, once relegated to the shadows, now demand to be heard. For years, whispers clung stubbornly to the edges of Nashville's music scene, quiet rumors drifting through smoky backroom bars and echoing in the halls where country legends gathered. No matter how many hits Jeannie Seeley released or how brightly she shone on stage, those whispers refused to fade. Fans and insiders alike began to sense that beneath the iconic voice and radiant smile was a woman wrestling with something far deeper, something no microphone or spotlight could ever fully expose. Stories started to surface, subtle at first, then more persistent. Tales of erratic behavior during grueling tours, unexplained absences from high-profile events, and vague, cryptic remarks during interviews fueled a growing cloud of speculation. Some people chalked it up to the inevitable stress of a demanding career, a life spent navigating the relentless pressures of fame. Others whispered about darker battles, struggles with addiction, fractured relationships, or emotional wounds too painful to voice publicly. The truth remained shrouded in mystery, elusive as smoke, but the wildfire of conjecture was impossible to ignore, spreading rapidly through Nashville's tightly knit music community. Those closest to Jeannie found themselves caught in an impossible crossfire. Friends and colleagues were torn between protecting their loyalty and the desire to speak the truth. Some reluctantly shared guarded accounts, painting a heartbreaking portrait of a woman locked in a fierce struggle against demons she refused to name aloud. They described moments when the charm and vivacity they knew so well slipped away, replaced by shadows of despair and exhaustion. Others remained silent, bound by unspoken codes of trust, or paralyzed by fear of the consequences in an industry that has always been fiercely protective of its own image. Meanwhile, the press hovered like vultures, hungry for a story, but cautious about stepping on toes in the close-knit country music world. When whispers about Jeannie's troubles surfaced in tabloids or gossip columns, they were often swiftly dismissed as wild rumors or sensationalized fabrications. Officially, the narrative remained one of success and resilience, a story carefully curated and polished for the public eye. But behind closed doors, the gossip only grew louder, more urgent, more insistent, forcing even the most skeptical observers to wonder what really lay beneath the surface. At the heart of the swirling speculation was a question that haunted many. Was Jeannie Seely's public persona merely a fragile mask, a carefully maintained facade hiding a crumbling reality? If so, who had the courage to peel back the layers and reveal what had been kept hidden for so long? The tension between the adoration she received from fans and the private turmoil she endured created a volatile mix, one that simmered just beneath the surface, waiting to explode. This growing discord set the stage for revelations that would shock even the most seasoned insiders. The perfect image of the beloved country star, long held sacred, was about to be challenged in ways no one could have predicted. As the lines between loyalty and truth blurred, the world watched, poised for a reckoning that promised to change everything they thought they knew about Jeannie Seely, and perhaps about the darker realities lurking behind the glittering lights of Nashville's country music scene. Behind the glamorous facade that country music fans adored, Jeannie Seely's life was increasingly shadowed by struggles few dared to acknowledge openly. The relentless pace of touring, the unyielding pressure to maintain her star status, and a series of personal challenges created a storm that threatened to consume her from the inside out. What the public saw was a poised, charismatic performer, always ready with a smile and a song. But beneath that exterior, the toll was mounting in ways no spotlight could reveal. Sources close to Jeannie described a woman grappling with deep loneliness, chronic anxiety, and a growing sense of isolation that haunted her offstage. The glitter and glamour of performing for packed audiences could not mask the exhaustion etched into her eyes, nor the moments when the overwhelming weight of expectation became too much to bear. It wasn't simply the external demands of fame wearing her down, but a battle with inner demons that she fought silently and alone. The disconnect between her public persona and private pain was stark and heartbreaking. During Jeannie's heyday in country music, Mental health was a taboo subject, an unspoken line no artist dared to cross. The culture of the industry emphasized toughness and resilience above all else, leaving little room for vulnerability or open discussions about emotional well-being. Artists were expected to deliver hit after hit, smile through the pain, and maintain an image of invincibility even when their personal worlds were unraveling behind the scenes. Jeannie's silence on these struggles spoke volumes, a reflection not only of her own fears and uncertainties, but also of the harsh realities of the time. Admitting weakness could mean risking everything she had worked so hard to build. To complicate matters further were persistent rumors of substance abuse, whispered quietly among insiders as attempts to cope rather than confessions of defeat. Friends and family recounted moments when interventions were attempted, only to be met with denial or withdrawal. These attempts to break the cycle often ended in fleeting moments of clarity that shone briefly like fragile flames before being extinguished by relapse. The painful back and forth between hope and despair played out far from the public eye, a somber and private counterpoint to the success and applause she continued to command on stage. Those closest to Jeannie wrestled with feelings of helplessness, unsure how to offer meaningful support to someone caught in the turbulent space between fame and fragility. The music industry itself, with its long-standing reluctance to confront mental health openly, deepened the divide. This unwillingness to face difficult truths left Jeannie increasingly isolated, even as the cheers of fans echoed around her. The very system that had elevated her also contributed to her sense of loneliness. Jeannie Seely's hidden struggles were not merely personal trials. They symbolized a far larger issue within the music world. The cost of stardom was often paid in silence, suffering, and unseen scars. For Jeannie, that cost was mounting to dangerous heights, threatening not just her career, but her very well-being. Her story serves as a stark reminder of the human fragility beneath the dazzling lights of fame, and of the urgent need for compassion and change within an industry too long built on silence. Beneath the polished surface of Jeannie Seely's public success lay a secret so powerful, so potentially destructive, that it threatened to unravel everything she had painstakingly built over decades. For years, this secret simmered quietly beneath the noise of her chart-topping hits and celebrated performances, buried deep under layers of denial, careful image management, and the kind of silence that only fuels suspicion. But secrets of that magnitude rarely remain hidden forever. When they finally surface, the fallout can be explosive, reshaping legacies and shaking the very foundations of an industry. According to sources close to Jeannie, this secret was far more than a simple personal failing or a private struggle. It was a revelation that went straight to the heart of her career, threatening not only to tarnish her hard-won legacy, but also to expose uncomfortable truths about the country music world as a whole. The kind of truth that ignites scandals, draws media frenzies, and sends shockwaves rippling through even the most tightly controlled celebrity circles. Whispers began to spread among insiders, cautious, fragmented accounts of legal battles, betrayals, and fractured relationships that extended well beyond the public eye. These rumors hinted at powerful hidden dynamics within the music industry, where influence and control often operate in shadows. It was the kind of power struggle that many prefer to keep out of headlines, but whose scars run deep and long, touching not just individuals, but the very culture of the business. The implications of this secret suggested a collision between talent and exploitation, between survival and sacrifice, with Jeannie caught somewhere in the crossfire. As the whispers grew louder, Jeannie Seely herself became increasingly guarded. The vibrant, approachable figure beloved by fans started retreating from public appearances and interviews, maintaining a tight inner circle of confidants. Her management team's attempts to control the narrative and quell rumors only intensified speculation. The more silence there was, the louder the questions became. Fans and media alike could sense that something was brewing, a storm gathering just beyond the horizon that would test loyalties, reputations, and even careers. But this secret had evolved into something much bigger than Jeannie Seely alone. It was no longer just a personal scandal. It had become a symbol of the fragile ecosystem that sustains country music. The price of fame, the cost of survival in an industry that often masks its darkest realities behind bright lights and warm smiles. It exposed the tension between the glossy public image and the complicated, often painful truths hidden beneath the surface. What made this secret so devastating wasn't just its content, but its timing. In an era when country music is evolving, gaining new audiences, and battling for relevance in a crowded musical landscape, the revelation threatened to cast a long shadow over the progress the industry had made. It forced the question, how many other stories remained buried beneath the hits and the glamour? How many artists had faced similar battles, silenced by fear, loyalty, or the sheer weight of the system itself? For Jeannie, the consequences were profound. The secret's exposure risked alienating longtime fans, fracturing relationships within the industry, and overshadowing her musical contributions. Yet it also opened the door for crucial conversations about power, transparency, and the human cost behind the music. It challenged everyone, artists, executives, and audiences, to reckon with a reality that had long been ignored. In the end, the secret wasn't just a scandal. It was a reckoning, and whether the country music world was ready to face it remained an open question, hanging in the balance like a note waiting to be played. When the secret began to leak, the world held its breath, waiting for someone, anyone, to break the silence. What followed was a storm of revelations, confessions, and contradictory stories that spun a tangled web around Jeannie Seely's once pristine image. Friends, colleagues, and former allies stepped into the light, each adding their own piece to a puzzle that grew more complex and painful by the day. Some accounts painted a woman trapped by forces far beyond her control. They spoke of toxic relationships that drained her spirit and powerful figures who saw her talent not as a gift to be nurtured, but as a tool to be exploited. According to these voices, Jeannie's rise was shadowed by manipulation, her agency undermined by those who profited from her success, while quietly controlling her every move. Yet, amid this narrative of victimhood, others offered a different, harsher perspective. Moments of personal recklessness and missteps that only deepened her crisis. The truth, as it emerged, seemed layered and elusive, shifting shape with every new testimony. This cacophony of voices revealed the heavy toll the secret had exacted, not just on Jeannie herself, but on the people around her. Friendships crumbled under the weight of betrayal, loyalties faltered, and illusions long held about the close-knit country music world began to fracture. Beneath the polished surfaces and red carpets, stories emerged of cover-ups, quiet intimidations, and the ruthless lengths to which some went to protect their own interests. The industry's glossy veneer cracked, exposing the raw, uncomfortable realities lurking beneath. Amid the chaos, however, a handful of voices rose in fierce defense of Jeannie Seely. These defenders portrayed her not as a perpetrator or a lost soul, but as a woman battered by circumstance, resilient, misunderstood, and ultimately human. They reminded fans and critics alike of her undeniable contributions to country music's rich tapestry, urging everyone to look beyond the scandal and see the artist's heart, her passion, and the legacy she fought to build. This clash of narratives set the media ablaze, fueling a frenzy that divided fans and insiders alike. Some clamored for answers and accountability, demanding a reckoning that would bring justice and clarity. Others pleaded for compassion, urging understanding and grace for a woman caught in a storm that was never fully hers to command. In this swirl of accusations and defenses, the lines between truth and rumor blurred until it became impossible to tell who was really right, or what anyone truly knew about the woman they once admired so deeply. In the end, the story of Jeannie Seely became a mirror reflecting not just one artist's fall, but the complexities of fame, power, and loyalty in a world where image often masks reality. It challenged the country music community and its fans to confront uncomfortable questions. How much of what we believe is shaped by stories untold? And when the truth finally emerges, are we ready to face it? Then, just when the scandal seemed to reach an unbearable fever pitch, the mystery surrounding Jeannie Seely finally cracked wide open. What followed was an explosive revelation so shocking that it sent tremors through the entire country music industry, forcing everyone to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the beloved star and about the music world itself. The narrative that had long been whispered in the shadows was pulled into harsh, unforgiving light, reshaping Jeannie's story forever. The details that emerged were nothing short of shocking. At the heart of the scandal were betrayals of trust so deep they shook the very foundations of the industry's power structures. Allegations surfaced involving key figures once regarded as untouchable, individuals who wielded their influence to manipulate, exploit, and silence those who dared to stand in their way. Jeannie Seely, it became clear, had been unwillingly entangled in a dark and troubling chapter of country music's history, one marked by deception, coercion, and abuse of power. Fans who had long admired her for her voice and resilience were suddenly confronted with a far more complicated reality. The image of the cheerful, charismatic performer no longer told the whole story. Behind the music and the smiles, there was a web of exploitation and heartbreak that many had overlooked or chosen not to see. This revelation demanded that the community take a hard look at the vulnerabilities that had been masked by the glamour of fame and the carefully curated narratives sold to the public. The fallout was immediate and intense. Industry insiders scrambled to respond, some expressing shock and regret, others defensive or dismissive. Yet the truth had already escaped the confines of secrecy. The mystery was out in the open now, impossible to ignore or contain. It forced an urgent reckoning, not just about Jeannie's individual experiences, but about the systemic issues that allowed such abuses to go unchecked for so long. Questions flooded the conversation. Who was truly responsible? How many other artists had suffered in silence? What changes were needed to protect those whose voices had been suppressed? And most importantly, how could the industry support artists like Jeannie, not just in their moments of glory, but through their darkest battles? For Jeannie Seely herself, the revelation was a double-edged sword. It was a heavy burden to carry, reopening wounds that had been long hidden beneath layers of denial and silence. Yet, amid the pain, it also offered a fragile opportunity for truth and healing. The path ahead was anything but clear, marked by uncertainty, challenge, and the high stakes of a public reckoning that could lead to either redemption or further ruin. As the dust began to settle, the entire country music world braced for the ripple effects that would extend far beyond one artist's career. The scandal had cracked open a door that many hoped would lead to reform, transparency, and a more compassionate industry. But it also revealed just how deep the fractures ran, and how difficult the journey toward justice and change might be. One thing, however, was undeniable. The Jeannie Seely mystery was finally solved. And the truth, far from being simple or comforting, was a stark reminder of the cost of silence and the urgent need for voices to be heard. The moment the truth about Jeannie Seely broke, the very ground beneath the country music world shifted dramatically, irreversibly. What had once been a whispered, hushed mystery that circulated quietly in the industry's back rooms and backstage corridors erupted into a public reckoning that no one could ignore. Long-held perceptions of Jeannie as the resilient, beloved First Lady of the Grand Ole Opry were suddenly fractured, exposing cracks that had been carefully concealed for decades. Alliances that had once seemed unshakable fractured under pressure, and reputations, both hers and those of the powerful figures implicated alongside her, were dragged into the unforgiving spotlight. Some were met with sympathy, others scorched by scandal. For Jeannie Seely herself, the fallout was immediate, harsh, and unforgiving. Concerts scheduled across the country were abruptly canceled, sponsors and endorsements froze in place, and social media became a battleground where fans clashed between disbelief, anger, and disillusionment. The community that had once rallied behind her found itself caught in a maelstrom of media scrutiny, legal entanglements, and deeply personal reckonings. The protective walls that had long shielded the country music establishment began to crumble, revealing vulnerabilities that many preferred to keep hidden, vulnerabilities that exposed the human cost behind the polished performances and chart-topping hits. But the consequences of the scandal didn't stop with Jeannie. The revelations forced the entire country music community to confront uncomfortable and long-ignored truths about the power imbalances embedded deep within the industry. For years, a culture of silence, complicity, and quiet compromises had allowed exploitation and abuse to flourish behind closed doors. Conversations that were once taboo about mental health struggles, manipulation, and unethical practices now surged to the forefront of public discourse. These conversations ignited passionate debates about how much the industry had protected its stars at the expense of their well-being and how much needed to change to prevent future harm. Media outlets began uncovering stories from other artists who had endured similar pressures and abuses but never found the platform to speak out. The scandal surrounding Jeannie became a catalyst for a broader movement demanding accountability, transparency, and reform. Industry insiders, critics, and fans alike debated fiercely about the responsibilities of record labels, management teams, and the gatekeepers who controlled access and opportunity. The issue of mental health care for artists, once dismissed or overlooked, became a central concern, exposing systemic failures to provide support for those struggling behind the scenes. As the dust settled over the initial shockwave, it became clear that nothing would ever be the same. Not for Jeannie Seely, and not for the genre she had helped shape so indelibly. The fallout was about far more than just career damage or fractured public image. It marked a profound cultural reckoning within country music. The scandal laid bare the often unseen costs of fame and forced an industry and its fans to reckon with the human stories beneath the spotlight's glow. Jeannie's legacy, once assumed to be untarnished, was now complicated, a mix of brilliance and pain, triumph and tragedy. Yet amid the chaos, a new chapter was beginning, one that demanded honesty, healing, and ultimately, change. The music world watched as country music faced a crossroads, forced to decide whether it would continue down the path of silence and denial or rise to confront its darkest truths, forging a future where artists could finally find not just success, but safety and respect. In the wake of the scandal, the country music industry found itself split down the middle. Allies of Jeannie Seely emerged, eager to defend her legacy and highlight the systemic issues that had contributed to the crisis. They called for empathy, reform, and renewed support for artists navigating the pressures of fame and vulnerability. Yet adversaries also surfaced, some quick to distance themselves, others seizing the moment to advance their own agendas. Power players who had remained in the shadows suddenly stepped into the light, some with defenses, others with accusations that added new layers to the drama. The industry's often murky politics became a battleground, with reputations hanging in the balance. Award shows, record labels, and major festivals scrambled to respond, balancing public relations concerns with the urgent calls for transparency. For some, the scandal was a wake-up call. For others, a threat to the status quo. This division laid bare the complexities of loyalty and survival in an industry where image is currency, and the truth can be as elusive as a perfect note. Jeannie Seely's story became a symbol of broader struggles, between old guard and new voices, between silence and speaking out, between preservation and progress. Throughout the chaos, Jeannie Seely's voice remained conspicuously absent, an absence that spoke volumes. Fans and media alike speculated endlessly. Was she preparing a statement? Seeking legal counsel? Or retreating into silence as a form of self-preservation? When she finally broke her silence, the response was neither full confession nor outright denial. Instead, Jeannie offered a measured, heartfelt message, acknowledging her struggles and the pain caused to herself and others. Her words carried the weight of someone who had faced her demons and was grappling with the consequences. The public reaction was mixed. Some saw the statement as a courageous step toward accountability and healing. Others dismissed it as damage control. Yet, no one could deny that Jeannie's response added a new chapter to the saga, one marked by vulnerability and the possibility of redemption. Whether this marked the beginning of a comeback or the closing of a career chapter remained uncertain. What was clear, however, was that Jeannie Seely's story had transcended music, becoming a powerful narrative about resilience, truth, and the complexities of human frailty. Now, as the dust begins to settle and the headlines fade, one question lingers. What will become of Jeannie Seely's legacy? The woman who once stood as a shining beacon of country music's golden era now faces the daunting task of reclaiming or redefining her place in its history. For many, her contributions remain undeniable: classic hits, groundbreaking performances, and a voice that shaped generations. But for others, the scandal has cast a shadow too dark to ignore. The debate over separating art from artist reignites with every conversation, every tribute, every critical analysis. The industry itself grapples with how to honor her achievements while confronting the uncomfortable truths her story unveiled. Efforts to support artist wellness and reform industry practices have gained momentum, a testament to the lasting impact of the revelations. Ultimately, Jeannie Seely's legacy will be a reflection of a complicated truth, a story of brilliance and brokenness, success and scandal, resilience and reckoning. Whether she emerges from this chapter stronger or diminished, her journey has already left an indelible mark on the history of country music. And the conversation is far from over. What if the story we never wanted to hear is the one we need most? Now that the truth about Jeannie Seely is out in the open, the question remains, will we confront it honestly or let it fade into silence once again? The legacy of a legend hangs in the balance. Tell us what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.